Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Fierce Honest Hearts. I'm Heidi Ferguson, and with me is Fidista Ramsey. We're excited to be here, and as always, and appreciating a few of the giggles that we had before we started recording. I just want to share that with you because we laugh a lot in our relationship, which is fun. So starting off with a check-in, we were texting a little bit before the podcast, and I said to Vanessa, I'm extra excited to record today for this podcast. And I don't have a reason why I'm extra excited. I just am. I'm glad to be here, glad to be back, glad to have not recorded on Wednesday because I was needing a little friend support from you, and appreciating that we made that a priority because that was really helpful. Let's see. What is happening in my life? So, I think this is really interesting to talk about. So as you all know, I listen to lots of podcasts. And the one thing that I heard that I hadn't thought about, because you and I have talked about this, like when we're finished recording, I'm like, oh my God, I have a vulnerability hangover or whatever, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I shared too much. And then I go back and I watch it, and it's not nearly as charged or whatever. Anyway, and I was listening to the guys and Liz on the Man Enough podcast talk, and they were talking about how when they were talking about vulnerability hangovers, and they were also talking about how when they do share something really vulnerable, that's their perspective. It doesn't mean that's how it lands to everyone. And I have to tell you, Fidista, I was so I don't know if relieved is the word, but I felt like, oh my God, of course, this is going to land differently for every person who's listening. And so I'm feeling better coming because I never know, neither of us ever know what we're going to share here. I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to talk about today? But I like that. I like that we're very much in the moment. And then the other thing that I am really appreciating is last week we had Peter on, and when we had asked him what it was that draws him to our podcast, he said the honesty and the authenticity. And I'm like, that really matters. Like, it matters. And and it matters because people see us show up in our humanness, in our messiness, in our all the nesses, right, that we have, and it's all okay. And in that, there's going to be some vulnerability, there's going to be some maybe grief, there's going to be some laughter, there's going to be some humor. I mean, I want to always bring it all, because every human is multifaceted, and we're all multifaceted. And I think I know that's one of the many things that I love about the podcast. I love about us. I love about what we do, what we bring. And I love that people can see and notice in us, because, and I feel like I'm kind of going on and on, but I want to say one more thing, which is, we know we have viewers. Like, we have a lot of viewers. And because we can see them, we see the numbers on Facebook, et cetera, we see the numbers on YouTube. And what was interesting was how we found Peter had commented on Facebook. And I was like, oh my God, let's have him on for sure, because we've only had one other male on. But also the fact that he was resonating with what we were talking about. And so I'm not going to invite all the people that that respond or comment. And if I do, I only want you to say yes if you're comfortable doing it. But certainly, if you want to engage in a conversation with us, let us know. We would love to have you. We want more of that. We want to grow our community. So thanks for listening. I'm in for now.
Oh, hell yeah. That was so rich. Thank you for articulating something I can feel, but maybe can't fully articulate around, like, this is the waters we love to swim in. I like to come in, the water's warm is what I'm getting. And just the love of, love's not the right word, the value of honesty. Because I'm holding in my heart the cost when we're not honest also. Like, let's be real, right? There's a cost to dishonesty in relationships. And the cost for me as a highly sensitive person is too high. So I can't really tolerate that anymore. I think those are the people in my life that's kind of like, I love you and I can't have you in my life, which is brutal to some degree, and it's boundaried to another degree, right? I kind of hold both. Like, I wince at it, and I also trust that, if you want to play in the sandbox, come with the fruit roll-ups and the gummy bears, and like, let's play, right? Gosh, so much I want to check in on. I know we have time, but for me, I'm landing here with you, so it feels really sweet to simply, like, hear you, hear what is happening for you. It's grounding me. It's allowing me time to kind of anchor in. I was chuckling at, your request, like, hey, do you want to check in first? And it's like, I watched a pattern of mine, which is like, oh God, I want to say yes. I want to come through. I always want to come through for friends. And then as we were walking through that, it was like, actually, this is a no right now, because the coming through is raising my number. Right. And it's such a great reminder for me of the Care Bear heart that can sometimes get me in trouble. Right? To be like, I want to say yes, but it's a no. But to actually reach that arc that quickly, it feels like a win to me. Because I was aware of myself. Right? I had the most delicious coffee date this morning with my friend Christine, who is partnered with one of my best friends. And I feel like there has been this mutual desire between us to deepen our own friendship, not just because, she's partnered to my best friend, because that's like one layer, right? There's etiquette there. This is like soul to soul, wanting to know more and go deep. And I feel really enriched when I'm going to say I can be me in my geeky neuroscience, attachment styles, mystical, intuitive feeling place. And I noticed a part of me that was like, oh, is this too much for this person? And it wasn't, right? But like, just noticing that little voice that's like, oh, is this person going to run away? Because I'm going I want to go deep. I think that's historical for me. That's a historical story versus a real story. And listen, like, people might run away, that's okay. There's something different happening inside of me where I'm showing up as authentically as I know, because I know there's more, right? As much as I'm aware of me bringing that to the table. It feels really good. Yeah. So I guess to summarize, like, the coffee date was both joyful, but as I'm saying this to you, it was also reparative. Yeah. Like, oh my God, I'm getting fully met by a new friend versus like wading in slowly. And and I just, my goofy way was like, okay, here's my liability clause. Like, I want to go deep. Feel free to push back if it's too much, because I want to be considerate. Yeah. Felt good. Felt good to just show up as a little bit of goofy, nervous me settling in with a new friend. Because it matters to me to have friendships like that. And no one's going to build them for me.
Right. I have a question, a follow-up question.
Oh, sure.
I'm curious if, this fear that you have, right? Like, are they going to receive me? Or I'm curious if you've ever had any pushback when you have attempted to deepen a relationship.
I guess it wasn't explicit pushback,
Mhm.
but it was sort of like crickets or unresponsiveness.
Mm,
It's sort of worse to me.
mhm, mhm.
I actually would rather somebody say, I don't really feel comfortable going there.
Same. Mhm.
But I think it's like if you're like bubbling over and sharing your what's delicious for you, and then somebody's just like,
Mhm.
that's brutal for me.
Same. Yeah.
Makes sense?
Completely. Yes. Yeah.
I
I
would
mean,
much rather someone's like, whoa, Nelly, like I just met you. Like,
Mhm.
can we slow this down?
Yeah.
Then I can gauge pace.
Yes.
But if I think it's like if I sense judgment or discomfort from them, it hits a little shame monster in me
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
because I'm like, I don't want to harm people. I just want to know people.
Right. Right. And so I want to respond to what you just said that, if you experience judgment or shame or whatever from them, that is their side of the street. It really is because, and the only reason I know this is because it's something that I've had to come to terms with through a lot of tears and a lot of grief and a lot of loss. Like, and that's hard. That's
Yeah.
really hard to navigate through and to figure out. Um, but it was helpful to figure it out with someone that I could process it with. Like to
Mhm.
know that this other person has my back, they're going to support me. I can come to them with my truest self, and for them to say, I can see how this would work and I can see how this might not work. Like the truth of that is really important to me. And so, I mean, numerous times I've been slammed with this, and it is so like I can literally just feel my heart breaking, and such disappointment because my expectation. I mean, I had certain expectations, and that's on me. But I had expectations, didn't come through, and I'm like, okay, so this is what I have to live with right now, and I'll be okay, and I'll get through it. But it still really hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels as tender as like when I was a little girl wanting to make friends with someone and them being like disdainful of something about me or whatever, right? And so I can intellectually hold this isn't about me.
Yeah.
I can work with that. And then I still have to tend to the little girl who's like, why don't you want to play? You know? And then I also can own that. And I've had enough experiences where it's like, I'm not a like, I'm not someone that people are going to be like tepid about. Like, it's like,
Right.
oh man, she either really rubs me the wrong way or I love her.
Yes.
There's not like, meh, she's all right. I don't get that feedback.
Okay.
Though it may be out there. Like, so once like you, and I'm kind of hearing like once I drop the expectation that I would be for everyone,
Right.
right? And it's
Right.
like, oh, it's not personal. Like, does Celine Dion care that I don't like her music? No. She's singing to the people who do.
Right.
Right? Do I care about the clowns on Instagram that say stupid things? No. I'm there to serve the people who need
Yeah.
relationship support. And I think that's trickled into my own nervous system as you're not for everyone. No. And I don't know why. I do know why. There's still a tender heart underneath that.
Mhm. Mhm.
When you said heartbreak.
Yeah. The heart and the heartbreak is with people that I know and love,
Oof. Yes.
right? But it's but and I don't know, I honestly don't really pay attention to comments because I just don't. But for those who are and may have on my Instagram page or Facebook page, so be it.
Yeah.
So be it. Especially when there are people that are, especially though, and I've never had anyone who's high stakes that has said anything disrespectful, but yeah, those, and I also, like, I have such compassion for those people, which is, what would it be like to be them, to be that miserable? Because there's got to be a semblance of misery with that person who chooses to say these nasty things. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that I'm not that way.
Yeah. And I love the compassionate lens you're inviting, because I had a recent text that I just bristled at, and it was like, I have no response to this text. And someone very close to me that I love, right? But love and trust are different things. And at first it was just like a punch in the heart, because it was like, why would anyone speak this way? And of course, the process of compassion and understanding, and like you said, and I think of there's a Depeche Mode line I heard recently in a voice lesson where the lyric was like, I see your pain as a famine of the heart. Mic drop, right? And that line I heard Thursday while I was wrestling with something, since Monday. I was like, that's it. The knowing was like, yep, there's some famine in the heart for any human that shows up like that. And then, the shadow work is like, just like me, there are times in my history, it's unfathomable to me now. There are times when I had a famine of my own heart.
Yeah.
And wasn't in integrity in my speech, for sure. I don't know that it solves everything, but it helps, like that whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heavy, feels heavy.
It is heavy.
But it's not ours. Like, I think that's where I'm starting to be boundaried. Feels heavy, but like,
Yeah.
And then also in community, I think it is ours. We're all carrying it.
Right. Yeah.
There's like a line in Heathers. I don't know if you remember that movie from like way back in the day.
Oh my God, it's been years.
And one of the chicks was like, what's your damage? Right? In the Valley Girl. And so I think of that again with compassion, but kind of like, what's the damage here in this person? Yeah. Damage might be too strong of a word, but.
Yeah, well, I know that there have been, like, in the mental health world in the last couple of years, the question that I've heard come up again and again is, what happened to you?
What's the pain? Right.
Yeah, what's the pain? But like, what happened that brought you to where you are, for you to express and say and do these things? Because this is not really human nature. When we're nasty and when we do these things that are harmful to other people, or we say these things that are harmful to other people, it's really not our go-to, unless there's something that is that's coming sideways or coming directly, whatever that is, and we are in pain. So what we're doing is we're expressing our pain onto others by saying and yes, in some instances, damaging other people,
smearing it.
Yes, and that's another tentacle effect. Because when we're not healed in that, we're going to express in ways that are not supportive and do not feel good and could be harmful. Yeah.
At the very least, could be distancing.
That's such an understatement. Yes, very distancing. Yes.
Which is interesting to me, right? Because what I hear you say, I do think our human nature, because of our amygdala, we have this weak spot, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it's like, am I in human spirit or human animal, right? And can spirit tend to animal? And
Yeah.
where spirit isn't tending to animal, comes out sideways onto other people. Like here,
Yeah.
carry some of my pain, right? But what happens? I guess I'll ask you this, because we're empaths, we're intuitives, we're all the things. What happens for you on the inside when someone tries to smear their pain your way? Like, do boundaries go up? Do you take it and then give it back? Like, what happens? Your process.
Well, let me say that today is very different than 5 years ago
Mhm.
because I've done a lot of healing and I'm not completely healed. No one is ever completely healed, but I have healed a lot of my wounds. And I would say today I'm quicker to flip it. And by flipping it, I mean, for a moment, I take it in and I might feel a little badly, but I quickly flip it to the other person. I think, wow, they must be in a lot of pain to be attempting to put that on me.
Wow. So the compassionate lens comes
Comes
online.
through pretty quickly. It comes through pretty quickly. And the other thing that has been really helpful is when I when I see someone else's post and people are smearing their whatever, and I'm like, oh, there it is again, there it is again, there it is again. So it's easier so that's been helpful for me to identify it quicker and
Mhm.
easier. So then when it does come back to me, I'm like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I relate, right? And this the switching it quickly depends also on how high stakes it is for me.
100%. Yeah.
Joe Schmo with this road rage coming out sideways is like, ugh, whatever, that guy's struggling.
Yeah.
Someone very close to me, it's like the turnaround time is a little different because it goes
It-
deeper.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think because there's care online and there's a connection there, and it's like, oh, why are you throwing glass into the sandbox? Now you got to clean that up. You
Yeah.
could have just come with fruit roll-ups. Like, what the fuck? There's some judgment there on my end that I have to work with. And when it's someone I deeply love, who I want to have healthy connection with, and then they do something, I'm going to call it like suboptimal, right? There is disappointment. Again, because of my own expectations, right? Not rooted in reality, sometimes rooted in fantasy. And I think it's not just my adult self online.
Mhm.
When it's a stranger, an acquaintance, whatever, it's the resourced adult going, okay, what's that about? But when it's someone super close to me, like inner circle close, there's like a little kid that comes online that needs a little bit more tending to.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Like, hence it's like,
Totally.
it's not just me being clear. It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
someone's really heartbroken over here. I gotta go
Yeah.
check on that 6-year-old, that 8-year-old, that 12-year-old,
Yeah. Yeah.
whoever's heartbroken. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some of that in our conflict from time to time
Yeah.
where, wounds had to be licked or whatever. And yeah. And so that has certainly shifted things for me, like just being more aware, more hyper vigilant about it. I'm like, okay, it's and in the end, I also know that it's going to be okay. Like after the repair, I mean, I know all this is going to happen. I'm like, we're going to be okay, but there are steps to get to being okay.
But how wonderful of an emotional safety net. Because I'm feeling that in my heart. It's like, oh, we're crunchy, right? Like
Mhm.
big or small crunchy, but we're crunchy. And I trust you're going to have your back. You're going to have my back. I'm going to have my back. I'm going to have your back. And like, we know how to do this.
Yeah.
We know how to do conflict well.
Right.
It's huge.
It is. It is. And so for those who are listening, as Fittista and I are sharing this, we want you to know that this has not been this has not happened overnight. It doesn't just, this is a lot of reps that we both have done for ourselves and for our relationship. And take your time with it. Take your time with it. Get to know yourself, trust yourself, forgive your friend, whatever the situation is. But there's a lot of work and intention.
Mhm.
Intention. I cannot emphasize that enough. There's a lot of work and intention that goes into it. Oh, yes.
No, I often resource physicality because I feel like people have more realism about their physicality
Mhm.
than they do about their relational skills, because they're still skills. If you're walking into your first day of yoga, you're not going to expect yourself to do a headstand, I hope.
Right.
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 And yet people, at least in my work, feel like frustrated that they're not farther along. It's like, yep, first you're just doing child's pose. Then let's look at downward dog. Then let's look at the warriors. And then, you're not even going to try to do a headstand. You're going to just do plank and see what your arms are about. Right. And then slowly with blocks and things, you're going to start doing crow or whatever, like where you kind of try to touch your knees to your elbows, but you're not putting any weight on it yet. Like you add bars. You add weights to the bar, right? People seem to get that realistic view with their physical body. And I continue to want to massage that in about their emotional body.
Right. Yeah.
It's work, it's skills.
It is. Yeah.
We're still learning.
We're still learning. And thankfully, we have, you're talking about the structures with the blocks, with the yoga, the metaphors of the yoga, but without the structures, without foundation, you're going to be screwed. You're not going to be able to get to all the poses, all the different kind of stretches that you want to do. And same way with friendship.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes building. It takes time. It takes building. Like I'm repeating, but I'm repeating for a reason.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't happen overnight. And
nothing of value happens overnight.
Nothing of value happens overnight. And I can't tell you how many times this week I thought of the Pilates that you mentioned last week. And I was like, because I've seen these people, on machines, and I'm like, that looks really hard. Just to have the like if you don't have core strength, but just to begin with the fact if you do have core strength, and how that has to be so solid to do these other things. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's really something. Yeah.
It's a perfect example, having had 2 Pilates sessions now with my dear friend Amanda, like, we're starting on the mat and with the wall. And yeah, the first session was just like gauging, where am I? Right? Oh, that hurts my neck, or oh, my back doesn't like that, or oh, my core is shaking. And I think the shaking, I have a newfound appreciation for shaky because it's strength training. Right? So when people are in plank and they're shaky and then they start to judge themselves, right? Back in the day, it's like you're building strength through this shaking. Same thing with a conflict, with a tough conversation, with a sweaty confession, with all that stuff. It is strength training. So again, like when it doesn't it's like, hey, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. you know, and the coordination, right? Because what you're also talking about, what I'm hearing at least, is there is a process, there is a coordination of steps to come through.
Yeah.
Where conflict equals intimacy
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
versus disconnect.
Yeah.
Mm. I would like to share something specific today, if we can pivot. It's a minor pivot because it's still in this
Okay.
world. Today is Debbie Ford's
Wow.
9th year of post-transition.
Uh-huh.
And I forget the date every year, but I feel her hovering and closer like a week or two before, and never connect the dots, even this year. Like, she's been talking to me in the last week or two, and I've been like, okay, cool. And then I see the post and I'm like, oh, like, you know, whatever that energy of anniversary might be,
Uh-huh.
that kind of pulls in spirit or something, or at least maybe unconsciously I'm doing that. But by doing that, I mean connecting to it a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I feel that's not a good word anymore. I feel an unfathomable, vast, like lake-size amount of gratitude. That at 23, I got to sit at the feet of this shadow queen and begin to unpack all my victim stories. And again, ongoing process, right? 20 years later. But oh my gosh, talk about my big break in life. You know, like, I really am feeling into that with the work I'm getting to do with others.
Yeah.
Someone who saw me before I saw myself, like that gift. Someone like, I was like the biggest disaster when I walked into my first shadow workshop. I was wake and bake, you know, I was trying to get through the day by being stoned. I was miserable in my marriage, hated my job, felt completely in, I'm going to call it strategic north. It wasn't like my real self. I was doing all this strategy. And here's this person going, you're going to be a ray of light for the world. I see you beyond this dumpster fire that you think you're in. You're going to do something special. I just think to myself, like, I can't even think about it, like what life would have been like without meeting her,
Uh-huh.
mentored by her, and in some ways continuing her legacy, right? In my own way. It feels, I think I'm saying it from a place of like, we often think she could have been like, oh, well, Carl Jung's already talked about the shadow. Like, who am I to write books on the shadow and do shadow workshops? It's already been done, right? But then, like, who would I be? Where would I be?
Mhm.
And so I'm sensing that gratitude. And then the pay it forward's not the right term, but I think legacy, honoring someone's giving by giving. Yeah. And grateful to still be connected in other realms.
Yeah.
Maybe even more so.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Without the human limits.
Oh, beautiful.
Thanks. Felt important to just not, it feels important for me to say it so that I remember how important it is.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Sometimes if I don't declare it, it can kind of get swept away or lost for me.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
too?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Is there something you want to declare or say so it doesn't get swept away?
Yeah. So I had an experience last weekend where I was communicating with a friend via text. And there was there was something, let me say, there was a paragraph that was missing on his part. So we were going to do this thing, and then he unintentionally he left something out, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm feeling a little bit confused about this. And he was like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. And it was, money was involved, and okay. And I was just like, I don't know how I'm feeling about this now. And so, and I without apology, and that's what I want to talk about here. Like, in the past, I would say that I have apologized for things that are not mine.
Oof. Yeah.
And then that sort of affords the person whose apology it is to not apologize because I've taken, right? Okay. Yeah. And so, and I used the sacred, like I was really careful, and I used the sacred pause. And I just thought, I'm going to let him swim in this for a minute. Just the uncomfortability of it. I'm going to let him sit in it and just be with it. And very quickly he came around. He was just like, oh, so are you saying XYZ? And I'm like, yes, that is what I'm saying. He immediately apologized. He immediately said, okay, this is what I'm going to do to fix it. And I was like, oh my, it was a huge win for both of us and our relationship. And I so appreciated the fact that he stepped forward and he owned it, because in my experience with men, it doesn't, and with people, I want to say just humans in general who aren't thinking, oh, this might affect someone or this might change things or whatever. They might unintentionally or intentionally leave a step out. And then it kind of makes things messy or muddy, whatever metaphor you want to use. And I'm like, yeah, I'm so glad that I'm really glad that I did that for myself and for us.
For us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because what a gift to be called on something, I'm imagining in your way, pretty loving and steady, but honest and direct. Like, yeah. We need, I want people like that in my life.
Me too.
It's not comfortable. I don't like it when someone's like, I was hurt by that, or I felt one downed by that, or like whatever the feedback is.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to be that person, but because I don't want to be that person, thank you for the feedback.
Yes.
That in that moment, I was that person for you.
Yeah.
So I can keep an eye on it,
Yeah. And this way we can move forward, and we can move forward more deeply connected. And that's one of the ways, many ways, but that's certainly for me, one of the really foundational ways that trust comes about and is created.
Yeah, I have a curiosity question.
Yeah.
On the flip side, let's say providing feedback or impact to a friend, what's the cost to the relationship when they get defensive instead of reflective? What's the cost for you?
What's the cost for me?
If they're like, no, I didn't, or I did that because, right? It's the justifying, the explaining, the centering.
Right. Well, I approached it in a way of curiosity.
Yeah.
And a way of being, and honestly feeling confused. And so that's what I said. I said, what you shared with me, because we had gone to dinner on Friday, someone that I haven't hung out with in, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks. And we had dinner on Friday. And he said to me, my friends are doing this on Sunday, blah, 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 blah. Would you like to join? I'm like, of course. And, and like I said, and I'm like, so that's what I was remembering, this conversation. And he said he would contact me on Sunday just to kind of follow up and solidify things. Okay. So then I was getting a different story from what was shared with me, which is totally okay, but it wasn't communicated. I'm like, oh, we're really shifting left here. And I'm
I'm realizing I forgot to mention ...
Right. And that piece was missed. Right. And so I stayed in a place of curiosity and confusion by saying, look, I'm feeling a little confused. I see what you did here. Like, I see that you went ahead and did this. And I'm also feeling confused because I was under the impression that this was going to happen. And now this has happened, but I wasn't informed of all these things. And he got it. Like, he really clearly got it. He's like, okay, so are you saying this? I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And he apologized. I mean, it was very clean and clear. So if he had gotten defensive, I might have said to him, look, maybe now's not the time. We can table this discussion for another time if we need to. And I think I would also, I'm hoping, like, I'm really working to be as truthful as I can here. I'm hoping that I would have the audacity to say to him, I wouldn't feel comfortable enough to move forward unless we did clean this up.
Yeah.
And that's a barbell rep for me. Like, that's, yeah. Because this is this is a person that I would consider high stakes, that I really trust. And yeah, I mean, I would feel a great loss if I didn't have his friendship. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the barbell is important.
Barbell's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I know.
I get why this is, I mean, I continue to do the work and encourage the work, but then I'm also very much in touch with how vulnerable and how even I sometimes want to avoid the work. And I have normally considered myself non-avoidant. But sometimes when it's the closest people, it's like, I don't know what the fuck to do with this. I'm gonna take a long sacred pause.
Yeah.
And it's gonna look like avoidance because it's big enough that the pause is not like an overnight.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you got seen and heard and received ownership and course correction, and especially hearing it's high stakes.
And like you said, I want my friends to feel comfortable enough and safe enough to come to me with that kind of feedback and that kind of honesty. Because without it, what is there? Right?
Well, if we're not telling the truth, we're creating superficial relationships.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
So like, just own it. Like, I'm not, here I'm keeping it superficial. I'm keeping it safe. I'm saying this as much myself as to anyone else, but like, yep, here it's a little too high stakes. Here I don't have the strength yet or the skills yet, but I'm clear on one thing, which is I'm going to actively skill up. So this isn't a place I'm stuck. Yeah. Thanks, friend.
Thank you, friend.
I feel like a place of good completion.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Shall we pivot to a
so
card?
rich. So
I
rich.
know. I know.
Okay, yeah. Oh, if I spilled them all over the piano. Okay, do that way. How you guys want to do? That's fun. They got shuffled. They got shuffled on the keys. Okay. So, my dear, let's hope it's not a physical sexy time question. And let's go. You tell me when with the middle finger.
Okay. There.
This one?
Yes, that one. Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez, Louise. Okay.
Oh
No, it's good. It's juicy.
no. Oh, okay.
But it's also like, damn, who wrote this? Okay. Can you see this? No. No. Okay.
No,
let me go.
just read it.
How am I most similar to you? And how does that scare you?
Oh my God. How are you most like me?
Right. And
And
how does that scare you?
And how does it scare me? Okay. Oh. I'm noticing I'm getting a little, okay.
Yeah. Knowing it's your experience,
Yeah.
all that you said at the beginning, which is like, this is just how I feel about it. You know?
Yeah. So let me start by saying that many times my own depth scares me
Hmm.
in a good way. Like once I get through it, once I face it, and I get through it, I'm like, okay, I'm okay. And what else could show up? Right. So I would say our level of depth, like I love that similarity in us. And I'm also a little, and it showed up today when you were like, can I forget how you framed the question, but you wanted me to go a little bit deeper. And I'm for a moment, every time you do that, I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, oh, okay. We're good. It's okay. Right. Because I'm talking to you. So it's a safe space. And I know that whatever it is that I share, you can hold that with everything that you are. Yeah, so that's really lovely. Anyway, so I guess I'm asking.
This is a pretty confront, like I'm feeling the fire beneath this question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, how are we similar?
Yeah, how am I most similar to you and how does that scare you? So yours
How are
was
you most similar to
depths
me
you
and
can
how
go
does
to.
that, and how does that scare you? Or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm, yeah, this is something I continue to work with myself, like in terms of my sensitivity and where I can get flooded or overwhelmed quickly. So same as you, like I know this place in me and I know how hard it is to like back out of that place when I get into it. So yeah, it's the exquisite sensitivity that can lead to flooding, inner flooding, right? And I guess how it scares me is maybe the toughest moments you and I have had is when we were both flooded and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And like neither of us could paddle, right? It's like the oars got dropped or whatever, because we're both like, fuck, I guess I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
The best we could do was have a compassionate time out for ourselves, knowing we picked this up as hard as it felt once our numbers were down. But yeah, I would say the Care Bear heart that cares so much that can get flooded and overwhelmed. Because that's like, we've been there a few times
Oh, we have.
and I'm just like, this is the hardest place to be with someone I love.
Mhm.
And of course we work it out, but in that moment,
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of excruciating over here.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining over there for
Oh,
you.
100% over here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you for naming that. Yeah. And and what's interesting is that once it's over,
Yeah.
I don't really think about it too much. I'm like, oh, because I so deeply trust that we're okay. And then the gift, of course, that always shows up is the intimacy, the closeness, and the repair that we've done. I'm like, oh,
Trust. That's
yeah,
trust building, right?
trust building.
It's
Yeah.
security enhancing when we get through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I'm learning you, right? Like, and you're learning me. And so there's those places to navigate. What feels so um amazing, if that's the right word, is like, even in that sort of impasse moment,
Mhm.
there is some part of me that's like, we'll figure this out. It's a very teeny tiny part because the
Mhm.
rest is flooded. Could be
Mhm.
1%, but it's
Mhm.
there.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks, friend.
Thank you, friend. Wow, this was really rich. Ooh, yeah. So thank you to our audience. Thank you to Fadista. Thank you to me for continuing to show up, be consistent here. This is our 99th episode.
Yes.
I'm really proud of us. I'm really pleased with the fact that we have hung in there,
Mhm.
continue to hang in, and show up for ourselves and show up for our audience. Again, if you haven't yet subscribed, subscribe to YouTube, give us a shout out, send us a like, whatever, let us know you're here. We would just love to know that we're not alone, even though we're not alone. It's just nice to,
Yeah.
it would be nice to say, for someone to say, hey, I'm here, I listened, appreciate, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, I just think of the winter in the Northern Hemisphere. If you're feeling alone, please let us see you. Be
Yeah.
seen, be heard. Like, that's what we want. So know that you're warmly welcome into dialogue here. And even if it's dissent,
Yes.
right? We're not expecting everyone to just be like, oh yeah, 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 I agree. If there's something
Right.
that you're like, yeah, I kind of dissent, I don't agree with that.
Mhm. We want
We're
to
here.
hear it all.
Mhm.
We welcome the honesty. We welcome the feedback, regardless of what it is, with respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Until next time, much love.
So much love.